think of your life as a movie. Every moment is ripe for product placement.
Oh, yeah.
And I just shared an Instagram post the day before yesterday where I said, I haven't paid for a vacation for my family in 6 years because I have gotten every step of that trip subsidized by brands.
Hello, and welcome to the Master the Media podcast. I'm your host, Amy Gorin, and I'm here with a very special guest today, Jamie Hess. Welcome, Jamie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm putting my phone on Do Not Disturb so no one can disturb us.
Thanks for being here. I know Jamie and I were just talking about all the crazy life stuff that happens at the same time that you're juggling all of these successes. So Jamie, I'm actually going to let you introduce yourself, but Jamie is an incredible influencer, QVC host, and I'll let her tell you more about herself.
Thank you. Yeah, it's helpful for me to kind of explain my career from the back forward just to make it make sense because there is quite the trajectory. I did start my career for 17 years in PR and marketing. I worked for most of the big agencies that you've heard of in New York City. I represented brands like McDonald's, General Motors, Pernod Ricard, W Hotels Worldwide, and Barry's Boot Camp, which was one of my favorite clients, so much so that I actually got engaged on a treadmill at Barry's Boot Camp.
Oh my gosh.
And that moment kind of started my public-facing persona, me and my husband, as a fit couple on Instagram. We had shared that moment and it went kind of viral. In fact, another part that I'll mention is that my mom is TV journalist Joan London. So she co-hosted Good Morning America for almost 20 years. And my mom was at the engagement. And, so often happens, people wanted to write about Joan London's daughter getting engaged at Barry's Boot Camp at 6 a.m. And they did. And so my original Instagram account, I say original, the original handle was NYC Fit Fam. Now don't go looking for that today because today my handle is my name, Jamie Hess. But originally, I started sharing just my life as a fit couple and then a fit mother. And it took off. And I had this side hustle during my corporate job, which was to say I was a senior vice president of this company, traveling back and forth to Chicago every week to go to McDonald's headquarters and also maintaining this side hustle as a paid influencer. And I'll never forget it. I had gotten a call from a PR company inviting me to an event, and they said they would pay me $3,000 to show up at this event and post a little bit. And I had to pretend that was something that happened to me every day. I was like, I think I could make that work. And I hung up and I was like, dollars to show up and post. And that was kind of the moment that I realized that it was maybe time to pick a lane and exit stage left from corporate. And so I took that big leap that so many people, it's scary. And I left my corporate job. I also was pregnant, by the way, at that time. So extra scary.
That's a lot all at once.
But I am so glad that I did because what ended up happening was in the next 18 months after I left that job, I 5X'd my income on just by doing brand deals. And I had a podcast that I had monetized as well. And then that all became the springboard to the rest of my career. So today I'm an on-air personality. As you said, I'm on QVC. I represent tech and electronic products. I'm also on all the other shows. Like last week, I spent a whole day on News Nation and I was just on The View. So I'm on a lot of television shows, either as a lifestyle expert or as a paid brand expert, speaking about brands. I'm also a TEDx and keynote speaker, and I help people kind of up-level their professional and personal lives. And I'm now an author. My book is coming out November 10th, but it's available for pre-order now. And it is called The Gratitude Ship. So I also have a podcast called the Gratitudeology Podcast. So it seems like I do a million different things, and I do.
Congratulations on the book, by the way. It's so exciting.
Content creator, TV personality, podcaster, keynote speaker, and coach. But really, it does all ladder up to this one idea that I believe that professionals and women in particular can and should take control of their lives, step into their greatest happiness and confidence. And the last thing I'll say to put the bow on top is that before all of this, I was a sick and suffering, hopeless and helpless drug addict. And my recovery story is a big part of my trajectory that I like to share because I also feel like there was a time I didn't think I would make it through my 20s. And if I can do it, like if you're thinking, well, yeah, of course she could do it. No, babe, no.
Wow.
And a lot of people look at me now and they say like, wow, I can't believe you were ever a drug addict. And that's a big compliment because it just shows how much I've changed. But trust me, if you saw me at like 19, you would have been like, no, this girl might not be able to hold down a job, let alone 5 of them.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that I'm guessing there's people out there who are listening who, are like, yes, that's me. I can turn things around. Yep. So
that's why I share it.
I love it. So the reason I had originally asked you to be on the podcast was because last time Jamie and I talked, she shared these really uniquely put together deliverable ideas for working with brands. And I was so intrigued by that. But I think that's only going to be part of the conversation based off of everything that you just said. So let's dive in a little bit of what is your normal week? I just want people to get a little bit of a clearer picture of what, a day in the life, a week in the life of Jamie looks like.
Yeah, it's a really important question because you're talking to a lot of people like I do. Oh, I forgot to mention the last part of what I do is that I'm a coach and I have a coaching course called Brand Ninja where I do very similar to you, although we have kind of like maybe different avatars, right? Like you work so much with people in one category and probably I work with people either adjacent or in another, but I teach people also how to secure the high paying brand deals of their dreams. And so
you're working more with influencers probably while I'm working more targeted toward healthcare professionals.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not necessarily influencers or they don't think of themselves as influencers when they start. A lot of my clients are podcasters, keynote speakers, authors, people who already have maybe a platform or a POV, but they never thought of themselves as influencers because to them, that's a dirty word. And I'm sure you get that all the time. Oh, I don't want to work with brands. That's like weird and Kardashian-like or whatever. And I say like, gosh, you don't get it though. Why are you taking out high interest business loans or like bootstrapping your stuff when there's definitely a brand that would like to be the hero of your narrative? And I know you teach that all the time.
Absolutely.
So to take a step back, I do have a lot of different jobs. And part of the reason that I share my whole backstory is to explain a little bit about how I came to where I am. Because everything I do, especially in coaching, is based on this situation that I'm a bit uniquely positioned because I was a public relations professional for 17 years. So I know how I would want to get pitched by influencers when they wanted to work with, say, McDonald's or one of the brands that I repped, and I was hiring the influencers. So it was easy for me from the beginning to know how to pitch. All of that said, I have a million hats. I have 2 kids. I now live in Pennsylvania because that's close to the studio at QVC. And so I went from living in the middle of New York City to kind of being like out in the country, slower paced life. But I still have to keep the discipline and diligence and figure out how to run a successful business and not lose my mind. So I have my non-negotiables. I have my anchors, and those include, movement, obviously working out. Those include time with my husband and my kids, but specifically my husband. So we get up in the morning, 6:30. And the first thing that we do is we go downstairs when it's still quiet and we have a couple different daily reflection books and prayer books that we read out of. And we pick a couple of cards from mindfulness decks and we start our day by setting intentions. Because I think it's really easy, especially for type A people, to just lose themselves before they've even begun. And that's definitely true for me. So that is how I start and anchor my day. Then in the morning, I either go to a workout or to, a spiritual recovery meeting. And those things are non-negotiable. Like they don't fall off the map because I have a busy work day. They cannot. They're the first thing I schedule when I do my scheduling for the week on Sunday nights. And then everything else falls in line behind that.
I love that.
Other than that, I time block and I have an assistant that comes in 2 days a week and works 1 day a week remote. And the 2 of us just kind of time block and work through it all.
I think it's really important, like you just said, that, to schedule in those non-negotiables. Like for me, it's, dinner with my daughter, however chaotic sometimes that is, like we sit down and we eat with her, and we, my husband and I both work from home. So we also make her lunch and like take a minute away, just a couple minutes to make that meal for her. But it is so easy to get lost in the day and say, I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that. And then all of a sudden you feel like you have nothing special to savor.
Yeah. I got into that really bad just a little while ago. It was maybe a year and a half ago now. I felt like I was in a place. Have you ever felt this? And I'm posing this to your audience, that you're in like the best place and the worst place of your life simultaneously. Like I felt like I was in a place of like abundance and professional wins. And also I was like painfully unhappy. And it was because I was not sleeping. I was staying up really late to work all the time. So my sleep was thrown off, and that immediately throws you into dysregulation. And I was just disprioritized. I had not prioritized my life in the right way. And I took a really intentional effort this past year, starting right around the beginning of the year, to change that. And I've been very intentional and framed it out. And it included journaling and therapy and working with a coach to help with intention setting. So we've all got to do it. And by the way, if you ever work with a coach that doesn't have a coach themselves, find a different coach.
I'm so glad you said that, because I like literally it's like a hierarchy of like, because I coach, I have a coach, she has a coach who like makes even more money than she does. And it's like but it's not even about that. Like I was telling one of my students earlier, I was like, my business coach is basically my therapist. Like I don't have time to see both. So it's her.
Sure. Absolutely.
I love that. But yeah, I mean, it can be very 50-50, like 50% wonderful and 50% like falling apart all at the same time.
Yeah. And I mean, here's the thing about life, right? Is like, I call it the gift of desperation. I'm definitely a 911 girl, meaning I have to be in enough pain to make a change. So I actually prayed for that bottom, because if I'm just in discomfort, I'll figure out how to make it work. I'll put on my big girl panties and, muddle through it. But when I'm in enough pain, I will make big changes. And I'm so grateful that happened, because it felt like my bottom with drugs and alcohol many years ago, 20 plus years ago when I got sober. I was in enough pain and I realized I had to make a change. And this time was, not quite as dramatic, but similar to where I said, okay. I got to make framework changes, systems changes, team changes, like who do I need to bring in, whether it's personal or professional, to make this run smoother. And that's what I did.
That's beautiful. Let's pivot a little bit to talk about the actual brand work. So I know you said like that first $3,000 deal was like the aha moment, but what happened after that?
Yeah. So very quickly after that, I'll tell you what happened, the pandemic. And so what's really interesting is I left my job in October of 2019. And here we go. I'm kind of just wading through the waters of being a new solopreneur through the end of the year and the beginning of 2020. My husband and I had made an agreement that I had to make what I was making at my job plus whatever I would need to make additional, because I was now going to have to pay for our family's health insurance, which in New York was
just so crazy expensive.
More dollars a month. Yeah. And so I had to make that much for 4 months in a row, and then I leave my job. And I was like, okay, I love a challenge. So I did that. I left my job, but still I wasn't making it right off the bat. And so he floated me for those first couple of months. I wasn't like in a position where it was like, right out of the gates. And it's okay. I was getting my footing. I was figuring out how this all worked. And I had started my podcast in January of 2020 with 3 other girls. I have a different podcast now that I've had for 2 years. But the first 4 years of my podcasting, I co-hosted a podcast with a couple other women in wellness. It was called Off the Gram, like off the Instagram. It was everything at the cross section of wellness and social media. So we were recording in a studio. We were having celebrity guests come into this studio in New York, and boom, global pandemic in March. I moved to Maine. My other friend went out to her house at the Jersey Shore. My Megan Murphy, was one of my co-hosts, editor-in-chief of Women's Day magazine. She went to her house in New Jersey. And so we were all like, so the girls said to me, we had like a call, and they're like, so do you think that we should just put it on pause while this happens? Because remember, we all thought we were going to be locked down for 2 weeks, right? And I said to them, are you girls out of your mind? This is our moment. This is the time when brands want to figure out how to exploit this global pandemic without looking exploitative. They want to figure out a softer way into the conversation. They want to figure out they're now not able to do experiential live events and sampling. They need to figure out other ways to do things that are experiential adjacent. And I was like, gang, this is our moment. I'm going to put together a proposal tonight to sell to brands a quarantine wellness sponsorship package where you can be a part of our show, promoting and preaching quarantine wellness, how to keep people mentally safe, physically safe, all, because I was now getting asked to do, and so are my co-hosts, to do all of these TV segments about pandemic safety. I was on Cheddar and I was on Bloomberg, and all my co-hosts were getting asked to do that too. I said, we are like voices of this pandemic in wellness. Why would we not bring that into our show? Now, more importantly than even that, and the ad space, so to speak, on our show, because we would just do ad reads that we would speak, we would write them as commercials and speak them and put them in the show. But that was not the 360 package. The 360 package was, there's 4 of us, we were all influencers. So I would create like a deliverables package, couple ad reads, maybe 3 in-show ad reads. And then we would each, depending on how much money they paid us, they would get like 2 or maybe 3 of us to do social media posts with the brand. And then I came up with this idea. I was going to do something called Off the Gram Live. Now, nobody can do anything live in the middle of a pandemic, but I was going to do it live on Zoom. So what I did was I created this idea. All I had to do was book a celebrity guest. And they were like, well, how are we going to get a celebrity guest? I said, we're going to ask them. And by the way, that's how you get 9/10 of the things done in this world, right?
Yes.
So we started reaching out to like anyone we knew that could be good guests. And of course, we each got 20 no's. All it takes was the one yes. So our first one was Ariana Huffington. We ended up doing
Amazing.
2 of these, by the way. Yeah, our second one was Schwarzenegger Pratt, Schwarzenegger's daughter, and she's married to Chris
I know who you're
Pratt.
talking about, but
Your audience is probably yelling at us as they're speakers right now. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Anyway, the 2 of them, so I did one, and then 6 months later I did another because it was so successful. Here's what it was. I sold tickets to the Zoom room. Now, I also partnered with a charity. The first time I did God's Love We Deliver, which is a charity that brings food to homebound New Yorkers. And then the second one we did with the Ronald McDonald House. And all of the ticket sales that we made, we charged maybe $50 a ticket for our gals to buy a ticket to be in the Zoom room for this live podcast interview with Ariana Huffington. Like, how exciting is that, right?
How many tickets did you sell?
We had to cap it because Zoom was like 100 people. So I think we capped it at 75, which was great, plenty.
Nice and intimate.
Room for Q&A. So we, that was like, whatever it was, like the couple $1,000s that we would donate to the charity. And we donated 100% of our proceeds to the charity. So people wanted to buy that ticket because they knew they were doing good. But where we made our revenue and we were able to bring value to brands is that we created this idea for a party in a box. So we had like 10 or 15 brands that paid different levels. I think it was maybe like, our first one was maybe like $5,000, $8,000 or $12,000. And then it got more expensive as we went along. They would have the opportunity to have their product in this big box that was getting sent out to all 75 of our ticket holders. So on the night of the event, everyone was doing this unboxing, posting their unboxing content, because who doesn't want to do that? It's like cool to do that. And we were all having almost the ultimate girls' night in together. So they were getting things like soft jammies and supplements and gummies and drinks and beverages and snacks and candles and Tommy Bahama, blankets. And we were having this ultimate slumber party together, making people feel one step more connected during a global pandemic. These brands got to be the hero of that narrative. And everybody was happy. The brands because by the way, who do you think bought the tickets? They're all of our friends and super fans who are all influencers or micro influencers. They're all of our wellness girlies. The brands were thrilled because they basically got a guerrilla influencer marketing program. We were happy because we got paid. The brands were thrilled. And our charitable partner was happy. And they did the actual putting the boxes together. We just sent the FedEx mailers. So that's why I partnered with brick and mortar charities. So they have intern teams that could put the boxes together and send them out.
That's so smart.
So every piece of this puzzle was well thought through. And, the reason I was able to do these types of programs, and this was all part of me 5Xing my income in those first 18 months, was because I came from the PR background. So I understood experiential. I also understood that I had to hire like an assistant or a VA really quick because all 75 of those people, I wanted somebody monitoring all of their Instagram stories day and night for 2 weeks after those boxes came to make sure we didn't miss a thing. And we could send a beautiful and viable recap report, an accurate recap report to all of our brand partners. Because I think influencers have a bad name because a lot of them do brand deals and they fall flat or they don't understand ROI. My goal is to have repeat customers. And I can tell you now that most of those brands that I worked with on that first experiential adjacent moment are still my partners to this very day.
That's honestly incredible. And I love what you just shared because like, that's something that we're always talking about in Master the Media. It's like, you don't have to, it's not just the Instagram posts or the, TV segment or the things that the blog posts, like the things that we think of over and over. It's all of these, like whatever you can think of, whatever you can dream, it is something you can pitch to a brand and it can be literally anything, right?
I always say think of your life as a movie. Every moment is ripe for product placement.
Oh yeah.
And I just shared an Instagram post the day before yesterday where I said, I haven't paid for a vacation for my family in 6 years because I have gotten every step of that trip subsidized by brands. And that's not like braggy, like I got them to pay my way. I created so much value because think of that backdrop. The last time I was on a trip with my husband for our anniversary, we were doing mountaintop vortex yoga in Sedona, Arizona. Think about what that could mean to a drone company that's out there paying for on-location shoots, paying $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 for on-location shoots. Here I am saying, hey, screw that. I'll do it for a measly $4,000. You are maximizing efficiencies when you think of how to make things solvent for brands. So rather than thinking I'm getting this money out of them, thinking, how can I really add value and make their dollar go farther? And then everybody's happy.
I'm in the process of planning. My husband and I are doing a vow renewal because we got married during the pandemic when there was no in-person anything. And so that's on my mind right now is like, oh, okay, we want, a fever tree, like, drink mixers and all of these things. Like these are all potential product placements.
Absolutely. And that's the thing though. It's also all in knowing how to make it work because a lot of people sell the dream to a brand and then they do a crappy job at executing. And that's really not fair. So I always, this is something I'll leave, your audiences with, and I'm sure you preach the same, but I really encourage people to approach every brand partnership, even if it's an in-kind partnership as, a professional. I treat them with the same care that I would treat my 7-figure client like McDonald's. There's a deal memo, there's expectations set, everybody knows deliverables, and we all know there's timelines, so things aren't just lingering because otherwise, if you keep it kind of sloppy, it ends up looking sloppy and feeling sloppy.
Oh, absolutely. And like over delivering if you can and all of those things.
Yep.
Is there another example you could share with listeners of, kind of that creative packaging because I really want them to get the picture of you guys are listening and, like I had a one-on-one coaching call with one of my students this morning who she won a one-on-one session with me. And I was like, okay, like we have to think beyond like the basic things that everyone else thinks of, like what makes you unique, what makes the brand unique. So you plus the brand and you marry those together. What do you have? And so I'd love to hear some more examples from you.
Yeah, I found my podcast to be like a really fertile way to plant great seeds for partnerships. So I have my podcast now is called the Gratitudeology Podcast. I tell stories of, like celebrities, 8-9-figure entrepreneurs and thought leaders, disruptors of the moment that the switch flipped and they started seeing life through a lens of gratitude. So usually there's like a crazy story in there. People who had near-death experiences or someone like David Meltzer, who like was a CEO of, every big company like Verizon. He was like a CEO and he was the agent that they based, what is it? Show Me the Money, Jerry Maguire. I mean, like, David Meltzer was at the top and then lost everything, went bankrupt and then built it all back up. So these people that have these wild stories, but it brought them to a place of gratitude, because I believe that those who have seen, the darkest depths see the light that much brighter. And those are the stories I'm trying to tell. My podcast is produced. It's pretty heavy lift because I produce it more like immersive audio theater with sound design and narration. So it's not just a chat show. I do the interview, and then we write a script and do like a lot of voiceover and narration. And then we pepper it all in with sound design and present it back almost like you're listening to a book on tape. It's really fun listen.
Wow.
But that leaves me the ability to also craft episodes. Like, I don't just take anybody. And so even at the sponsorship level, my sponsorship packages for my podcast range from $35,000, which is where you basically, buy your own episode and all of the fanfare around that, down to like $7,500, where you just get some in-show ads. Most brands come in at the gold or platinum level, which is 20 or 35K. And that includes a lot of integration. I don't just take anybody, because if they don't have a great story, they don't have a great story. And I won't let my podcast suffer. But for instance, I had one the other day. I don't want to say who she is because I don't want to blow up her spot that it was a paid placement. But let's just say this. She is an incredible entrepreneur, an American entrepreneur. She's got a great story. I mean, she was a wild child. She was a stylist, like just kind of a Southern belle and a stylist. And she styled all these country music stars, and she kind of came through and created her own design business. Well, I went to her in Kentucky, and I flew there. I hired a crew in Kentucky. I will go all in. And the way that I position it to the buyer is, think about it this way. You create assets. It's not even just the B2C play. You create assets for your B2B salespeople to go out and take your products in at the wholesale level into these big box stores, and to try to convince them why this brand is so great. Why would you want to buy this interior? It's like paint. She sells all these different products for the inside of your house. Why would you want to buy this over like, whatever, some other paint brand? A lot of the times the founder story has a lot to do with it. And when you have an incredible story that someone can really bite into, that's amazing. And they'll spend a lot of money creating those assets to imbue their B2B salespeople with, to tell the brand story. And I say, like, let me do that for you. I'm essentially producing a mini documentary for you that's going to be the story of your life, as if you're on, like, you know what I mean? Like a documentary on PBS. Like, I'm creating this incredible telling of you as a rock star, as a baller, and I make them feel like $1 million. Because if they're spending at that level, they should feel like $1 million. And I really work my tail off on it. So I try to get really creative. And here's the thing. I mean, I do everything for the love of the game, but I don't do anything for the love of the game. If there's not an ability to monetize it at least a multi-five figure, like at a $20,000 or $30,000 level, it's not a project I'm working on. So unless I can figure out a way that something makes sense, it's not in my arsenal of projects at the moment.
That is, I love the way you just talk through that, because it is something where, someone can get off even anybody's podcast. And this could be for listeners, like if you guys have your own podcast, and that could be the founder story that they're sharing with their community. So just think about that, and there's so many different ways that every deliverable, podcast, article, newsletter, social post can be, shared.
And I teach my students all the time. I say, like, we got to find your core competencies. And we go through this. Like in my coaching, we have a day where we go through their core competencies. One of mine is that I have a nice following. I have like 250,000 followers, but not everybody has that. And by the way, that's not always the top thing that I'm selling. I'm sometimes selling my network and access to my people. Like for instance, I'll give you a for instance right now. So my book is coming out November 10th. So one of the things I'm doing is creating this beautiful mailer box that's going out with my book in it and some custom merch that's, adjacent to the book. But I don't want to pay for that box myself. Those are expensive. I did one when I launched the podcast. They're about $15,000 or so to fabricate the box and do all the merch and, send it out, whatever. So I'm like, okay, I got to sell brands into this opportunity. And I want to sell maybe 3 or 4 brands into the opportunity. So I get it paid for and make a little money on the back end as well. Well, I know that this box is going to 100 of my friendlies, influencers, maybe celebrities that I've interviewed on the show, media people that are my homies. And so that's my network. And how it's so you could hire a PR company to do this. And by the way, if you hired a PR company to do this, they would charge you $25,000 minimum. That's like a standard rate for like a project fee for that, right?
Definitely.
So I come to them and I say, listen, you can be in this box. I'm going to do what a PR company would do for you and charge you 25 grand to do. Only I'm going to do it better. Because that PR company, they're going to have an intern pull a list, meaning use filters and, print out a list of just people. They're going to merge that with Excel and print out labels. They're going to slap the labels on the box, put it in the mail, and cross their fingers. I am going to be annoying AF. I'm going to be in these people's texts and DMs. Hey, sweetie, I saw with the tracking number that you got the package. Would you mind just posting about it? By the way, here's the handles of my brand partners. If you wouldn't mind just throwing them a shout out, I would be so appreciative. That's my job. If I take on a sponsor to be in that box and I charge them 10 grand, it's my job to make sure that they see ROI on that. And then I'm also going to offer them like a post agnostic of the box. So what I'm saying is I usually charge $6,500 for a social post. You are getting that. It's like a backdoor to working with me as an influencer, plus a full PR level campaign with this, again, guerrilla marketing, influencer marketing program. Plus you get to be attached to like the ethos of this moment around my book. Maybe I'm going to bring the products backstage with me. Like I'll be on GMA and I'll be on a lot of the shows. Maybe it's a beverage and I'm going to promise them I'll be sipping the beverage backstage. I'm going to build it into the excitement of the moment. And all of a sudden, again, maximizing efficiencies. Why wouldn't you do that? So I tell my students, like, you have other things and other ways in. I'll give you another example from a student of mine. She does DIY. And she's on a lot of the morning shows in the Atlanta area, showing people how to do DIY. They'll book her, not hire, because you do not get paid to do local TV segments. So I always say to her, like, that's great that you do local TV segments, but as we say in New York, that and a Metro card will get you on the crosstown bus, right? Like you're not getting any money for it. You're not getting paid. So how can you monetize it by working with brands? And I said to her, well, there's just the excitement of being backstage at a TV show. It might not be exciting to you because you've been doing it for a long time, but most people, that's really stinking cool to be backstage at local news, right? So, and I said, walk me through your day when you go do a DIY segment. And so she's telling me, oh, this, I have a bad back. So I always wear like this thermacare pad on my back. I'm like, stop.
There's a product.
So I said, what if we pitched thermacare, like a 3-post package? One is like a get ready with me to go on the air at Good Day Atlanta. One is showing you're backstage and you're getting your mic pack on and you're like, I just had to pull up my little blouse here and show that like, even with this like little suit on, the nice low profile of my thermacare patch means I don't have a sore back, even when I'm on my feet in heels for 5 hours doing the segment XYZ. And so I showed her how obviously she can't monetize the segment per se, but she could even bring in other brands just to be part of the moment. So this is what I mean when you got to think through every element of your life. What are your core competencies? Do you have a great network? Do you have access to interesting places? Are you someone like my sister? My sister has an account called Dough Life. She's a Play-Doh artist. So her account's DOHLIFE.
That is so cool.
She can create original content for brands. So while she only has maybe 5,000 or 6,000 followers, which is still great, she's gotten paid from Nickelodeon and Paramount to do original content for, what are the dogs? The dog cartoon, Paw Patrol and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So she was commissioned to do work for both of those brands, not based on her posting necessarily, although that was part of it, but based on them being able to repurpose her content.
Wow, that's so many ideas. I hope you guys listening are, jotting down like, okay, this is like, I wear Lululemon sliders around the house because, we have hardwood floors and I don't hurt my back, which, that helps keep things bouncy. So like that could be a potential thing. Like there's literally anything, right?
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Jamie. Is there anything that you want to leave listeners with that we haven't, touched on yet?
Well, I would just love people to know that my book is coming out November 10th.
Yes, you guys hear that?
It's available for pre-order now, and it is called The Gratitude Shift. So you can go to my website, which is meetjamiehess.com, and we'll have the link to that. And then also my coaching course, Brand Ninja, if that's a fit. I mean, you and I, we do very similar things. So, but if people are kind of at the beginning of their journey and they're in any sort of a different space and kind of want some of that more 360 knowledge, that's something that I do and I love to do. I have a digital course that is kind of what I'm pushing right now, because I usually do a Zoom cohort 4 times a year, but I'm so busy with my keynote speaking that right now my digital course is what I'm encouraging people to do, because that's evergreen. And I like that because you can take it at your own pace. And for me, sometimes, I'm sure there's a lot of busy moms out there. That is like all we have time to do. So you go to my website, meetjamiehess.com. You can find out more about all that.
Amazing. So we'll share those links in the show notes. Any other places to find you that you want to share?
I'm always available on Instagram. I'm at Jamie Hess, and my DMs are always open.
Well, thank you so much, Jamie. It's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast. And for any of you guys listening, wanting even more of a look into what you can earn working with brands, check out Master the Media's free pricing guide at masterthemedia.co/pricing.